Today, Democrats insist on paying for it with a permanent tax hike on millionaires. I don't get it, but let's go to our distinguished guests. We've got House members Charlie Rangel, Democrat from New York, and Jason Chaffetz, Republican from Utah. Jason, if I begin with you, the president also said just a few hours ago that if the Keystone Pipeline is attached to the payroll tax cut, he will veto the bill. As I understand it, you all in the House will put the Keystone Pipeline in. So what happens here?
Well, we very well might. Look, we want to grow jobs, economy, and we really do believe that the Keystone Pipeline is a very viable way to do that. And I don't see any reason why, if it passes the House and the Senate, that the president shouldn't also sign on to that. I have a hard time believing that if he got the payroll tax holiday, and that we also, Republicans also got the Keystone Pipeline moving along, which will create hundreds of thousands of jobs, that the president would ultimately veto it. I think that would be terribly irresponsible.
All right, so that's one strike against the president, Charlie. I want to ask you another one. I'm just going to throw you an easy high, letter high fastball. How in the world can you have a temporary tax cut for a year and a permanent tax hike on the great investors and producers in the economy for 10 years? Is not that self-defeating?
Let me wrap this up with some previous questions, because I thought I heard you calling the president or saying and charging him with class warfare. And I know it's your job to ask the questions, but anytime we find in this great country of ours the chances of working yourself out of poverty because the wealth is being held by just less than 1%, and we find more and more people being shoved out of the middle class, and it's the middle class that is the engine that runs our entire economy, and they're being pushed into poverty. And when you talk about whether or not it's going to be a temporary tax cut or a permanent tax cut, I've heard no billionaires complain at all of the percentage that we're asking of them to contribute to their country. And the fact remains that as long as middle-income people and working poor people have a couple of dollars to buy consumer goods, can't you interpret this as being a reward to our small business people that are losing customers because they don't have? You don't think so?
I don't think 1 year tax rebates, which is all this is, Charlie, with all due respect, I don't think they have ever worked. They didn't work last year. They didn't work under George W. Bush. They didn't work in the 70s when Jimmy Carter tried it and Jerry Ford. I know of no evidence where a temporary tax rebate works.
Well, Larry, let me make it perfectly clear. The only thing wrong with your argument is that you are an economist and you're making fiscal sense, and we are politicians, and there is no question that the Republicans are out to defeat Obama, and now they've caved into the public, who says, I dare you I dare you to cut my taxes. And so they are going to go along politically and say, we're with the president, but only if you take this other package, totally unrelated, in order to try to have it both ways. Well, if you're talking about fiscally soundness, we have to get back to what you and I were talking about.
I am.
Reducing the corporate rates, closing the loopholes.
Now you're talking.
And letting people, you bet your life I am.
Now you're talking. But let me get Jason back in, because Jason, Charlie Rangel is coming at me about class warfare, so I'm happy to put this back on the table. Jason, I say the president's speech yesterday, with all respect to the president, taxing millionaires, blaming businesses, blaming banks, blaming everyone but his own economic policies. And I think penalizing success, Jason, is class warfare, and it will damage the economy. What's your take?
Well, the president's been very good at the bumper stickers, but we're not implementing the systemic change that is going to give confidence to the marketplace to make those long-term investments. When you say that you're going to reduce the payroll tax for 1 year, you're talking about giving people an extra $20 per week. And if you're making $45,000 a year, I understand that that $20 per week is going to make a difference. But if you want to actually grow jobs in the economy, you need stability in the marketplace. You need to have predictable outcomes so that people can make these long-term investments that are truly going to grow jobs, both small businesses and large businesses, not by attacking millionaires and billionaires with bumper stickers. That's not going to solve the problem.
Well, the attacks are political, but you cannot knock giving more money for those people that don't have surplus money to buy their very needs.
But we also have to cut spending. We never cut spending. That's the problem.
Well, of course we have cut spending, but it doesn't make any sense.
Name something we've cut in the last 2 years.
Listen. it doesn't make sense at this point in time, and this is where you can go with your fellow economists and saying, firing people, laying them off, cutting them out of business, cutting across the line, doesn't mean that you're saving money. It doesn't mean that you increase in employment. Now, if we were talking about program after program and cutting waste and doing these things, much of which was done, pardon the expression, under the president's health bill, but there's no question that that money has been cut out and money has been saved.
Jason, what's your response
Larry,
to that?
look, Larry, I didn't create this mess, but I am here to help clean it up. And if you don't also cut the spending, which is just run rampant in this town, you've actually literally over the last 12 years, you've had a 91% increase in discretionary spending. I'm all for lower taxes, but you also have to cut spending. That never happens in this town, and it's fundamentally wrong.
And so,
well, I know you're going to agree with me that in order to do this, we cannot do it as Republicans and Democrats. We have to do it because we're concerned about our country. And when you find that the Republicans come in and not talk about economic growth, not talking about American going back to work.
That's all we're talking about. That's the only reason I want to do this.
It's to get rid of Obama. Now, it's been said by the leadership
because
in the Senate, and it's been said by the leadership in the House.
I would fire him if I had a chance. Yes, well, I would fire President Obama if I had a chance. I think as a CEO, as somebody who's helping to drive the economy, he's done nothing.
You do have a chance. Not only do you have a chance to fire Obama, but you have a great chance to hire Gingrich. So you have a chance. The Constitution.
I'm a Mitt Romney guy myself. I think Mitt Romney's the right best person. So, if you want a CEO who's grown businesses, who knows about capital formation, who understands the marketplace, Mitt Romney is that guy. The Democrats try to paint him as this, insider. He's held public office for 4 years.
Don't you start about Democrats hitting Romney. You better go to the Republican Party and see who's hitting. I think he's a fine gentleman. I don't know. I think that on health care, that he has some wonderful ideas that he shared with President Obama. But I am not knocking any of the standing Republican candidates. The only one that I will knock really is John.
Well, I'm going to knock Barack Obama because he's been a terrible president for the economy.
You're talking about John Huntsman, Charlie.
I am
from Utah.
John. He is the only one that I will knock because he's the only one.
Jason's former governor.
He's the only one making any sense, and we can't afford to have that in a debate for President of the United States.
Charlie, I was John Huntsman's chief of staff. I was his campaign manager. He cut taxes, but we also cut spending. And what's fundamentally wrong in this Congress is if you don't cut spending, you don't actually solve the problem.
I got to get out.
Congress are Republicans and Democrats, and unless you bring us together.
Thank you.
Let's get out of here, Larry. Have a good holiday.
Yes, you have a great holiday, Charlie Rango.
These are the holy days.
Remember, Charlie, free market capitalism is the best path to prosperity. Jason, thanks ever so much. We just had Mr. Huntsman on this show the other night. He gave us an excellent take. Next up on Kudlow tonight, banks are on high alert. There's a letter bomb that was found, and it was aimed at a bank CEO.